In 1995, a small animation studio named Pixar released a film that would forever change the landscape of cinema. Toy Story was the first full-length animation feature created entirely by computer animation. Its entry into cinema was the dawn of a new era in storytelling for animation films. But what made Pixar's approach so revolutionary? To understand this, we need to take a closer look at what storytelling in animation used to be. If we go all the way back to 1937, Disney set the stage for what a successful animation film should be with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This film was a landmark achievement as it captivated audiences with enchanting visuals, memorable characters, and musical numbers. Disney followed that up with other classics like Pinocchio, Bambi, and Cinderella, each pushing the boundaries of what animation films could achieve. While Disney focused on fairy tales, Warner Bros. Carved out a niche with Looney Tunes. These animation shorts were beloved for their sharp humor and iconic characters, like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. Meanwhile, Hanna-Barbera introduced animated television shows like The Flintstones and The Jetstones, which became cultural staples of animation sitcoms for family audiences. Concurrently, across the ocean, Japan was developing its own animation style. Astro Boy, created by Osamu Tezuka, became one of the first anime series to gain international acclaim. It laid the groundwork for the anime industry, leading to later masterpieces like Akira, My Neighbor Totoro, and Spirited Away, which actually won an Emmy. The anime industry brought a different flavor to the medium, with a focus on futuristic themes and moral dilemmas. Despite these early successes, animation films still had noteworthy limitations. For starters, characters were often one-dimensional and embodying simple virtues or vices, which made their development somewhat limited. For instance, in Disney's animation films, protagonists like Snow White or Cinderella were kind and pure, and their stories were driven more by external events rather than by internal growth within them. This limited the story development as the conflicts in these stories were often straightforward, with clear-cut battles being often reduced to battles between good and evil. Another limitation was emotional complexity. Early animated films did not touch on complex emotions, but they often stayed within the realms of easily understood feelings like joy, fear, and sorrow. These emotions made the narratives engaging, but they rarely challenged audiences to explore the deep, more nuanced aspects of the human emotions and experiences. With these daily understood emotions, the themes were often simple and moralistic, making the stories easy to follow, but they didn't challenge the audience to think deeply or feel beyond the surface level. The final limitation we're going to talk about is that these films often relied heavily on dialogue and musical numbers to convey their stories. Even though this approach was effective, it sometimes left visual storytelling underutilized, making the target audience for animation films to be primarily children. With most animation films being crafted with children in mind, it left room for a storytelling approach that would engage adult viewers. Pixar's entry into the animation world did just that. In its films, it introduced characters that were complex and relatable. Even though these characters were sometimes toys, robots, or animals, they were deeply human. For instance, in the case of Toy Story, Woody isn't just a heroic cowboy figure. He's a toy struggling with jealousy, insecurity, and the fear of being replaced. These are real, relatable emotions that the everyday person deals with. Another aspect of storytelling Pixar brought to animation films was a new level of emotional depth. Who can forget the poignant opening of Up? In just a few minutes, we experienced a lifetime of love, loss, and longing. Even though no single word is said, the story was still powerful and clear. This is emotional storytelling at its finest. Perhaps Pixar's most significant achievement in revolutionizing storytelling It's in its ability to create films that resonate with everyone. Not being afraid to explore these complex feelings like grief, existential anxiety, and even the nature of happiness makes Pixar's stories rich and multi-layered. In most of Pixar's stories, it offered humor and adventure for the younger viewers while simultaneously exploring deeper themes for adults. This inclusivity makes Pixar's films a beloved part of family entertainment as it bridges the gap between generations and creates shared experiences. A big example of this concept can be seen in the Pixar animated film Finding Nemo, which on the surface looks like a story about a fish looking for its son. But when you look deeper, you realize it's more about overcoming fears and embracing the unknown. Another example is Wall-E, which presents a near-silent protagonist relying on visual cues to tell a profound story about loneliness and love. There is also Inside Out, which takes us inside the mind of a child and personifies emotions to explore the complexities of growing up. These films were anything but conventional, yet they captured the imagination of audiences worldwide. From Disney's magical fairy tales to Warner Bros.' comedic shorts, early animation films laid a solid foundation for the animation genre. However, Pixar changed all that not only by the way it makes its animation films, but also by introducing a brand new storytelling approach that focuses more on character depth, emotional complexity, and visual storytelling. With this approach becoming a mainstay in modern animation films, Pixar can be regarded as the main actors who brought this new wave, thereby reminding us that at its core, great storytelling is what comprises a timeless animation film.